Come on and slam, and welcome to the Forced Showdown. This is Forced Showdown, CHAIRQUISITION. You might have heard of it. It's that thing we do at the 3/4 point of the Linux Gamecast show. But we're reviewing Forced Showdown. It's by Beta Dwarf. It's developed in Unity Engine. You can pick it up for around 20 of your local currency units. And what is it? Welcome to Forced Showdown, the only show in the galaxy with lives on the line. Clearly, you haven't seen my insert reality show here, something Kardashians. Pick one of the 4 contestants from across the Force universe, each a master of their own style of combat, and try to become a superstar of the show as you battle through worlds of enemies and face off against epic arena bosses. You may die horribly and repeatedly, but think of the fans and smile for the cameras. Now, Beta Dwarf, much like Forced 1, they sent us keys for this, so we're not going to promote our Counter-Strike Go gambling site right now, but we are going to explain the CHAIRQUISITION. 1 chair means that it's garbage, 2 chairs means that's meh, 3 chairs means that's pretty good, and 4 chairs means that's awesome. And we also have our categories of doom, which we apply these chairs to, makes the working, shiny sounds, controls, and fun. So, Ven, let's kick this off. Did the showdown make with the working down?
Down, doom, over here on the Ubuntu 1404 LTS. Octo-core powered, 980 displayed with the 4K goodness, which I didn't even bother with this game. I ran it in 1080p. It technically works. I mean, just kind of perusing some of the existing, primarily Windows reviews. I mean, this thing looks about as stable as a rabbit emu on a meth binge. Turns out it is actually rather stable on Linux. I only had 1 spite nope. No more after that, and I put a little bit of time in it. But I will say this about it. It loads from Middle Earth, and every time, guaranteed. There's no way around that. Technical issues. It doesn't know how to windowed mode, Brad, at all. It will put a border around the 1080 screen. That's about the best it's going to do. Then it'll launch, so I want a 720p window. And it was like, how about 720p at 1080? How about that? And I was like, no. What if I restart you? I was like, nope. Same thing. That definitely happened. And just really to kind of rub it in, we'll talk more about this in the controls section. One thing you'll notice when you start the game up is like, I've detected your X-Clone controller. And that's really all it should say, and that screen should just fade away because that's about the extent of anything that you're going to be doing with it. So, at the end of the day, it technically runs, so it will technically get 2 chairs.
Oh yeah, no, the loading time is abysmal considering and considering how fast paced this game is supposed to be. Like going from dungeon to dungeon or going from arena to arena isn't too bad, but if you once you get out of there, once you go to like the level select or the character select, everything takes forever to load. I actually got 2 spike crashes on me from 2 separate occasions. Didn't really have any more after that. But one thing that really pissed me off, it did not lock my cursor to the window. I'll get to that a little bit more in the control segments. But all in all, there is a myriad of some technical issues. So it'll get 3 chairs. It works, but it's not perfect.
On what?
On the Fedora 22 64-bit with this i7-6700K, NVIDIA GTX 980, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah, Fedora 22 is reaching end of life soon. On my end, on Fedora 23 64-bit, with the FX8370E overclocked at 4.2 GHz and the GTX 970 Strix, I had absolutely no spike crashes. I really didn't. I did have issues with the controls, but we'll leave that for the controls. Really, when it comes to makes with the working, I had really no issues. So 4 chairs.
All right, so that's 3 chairs for mix with the working. Up next to Shiny and Sounds, Ven, you have prepared an essay for us, so I'll just let you get it.
It looks better than Forced. Then again, that's not saying much. Actually, the level design in Force looked all right. It was the characters. It was like, is that placeholder art? Is that ever going to get updated? It didn't. Nope. They absolutely did learn how to art. I mean, the characters look decent. The model, the animations, they all look good. I mean, they're absolutely a bit of all right. Nothing to complain about. It's very colorful, very, it's varied from, you know, under the sea, you're in a garden, the boat is now diamonds or something like that. It's all right. I didn't mind it. I can't really knock it anything for the way it looks. The sounds, it's like the announcer made me laugh. The announcer made me want to stab my brain with a Q-tip. But, you know, you can cut the sounds off, and that's kind of the way I played it. Yeah, I had a good time getting killed to death with it. Really no complaints. It's not amazing. I mean, it's not AAA, but it's a hella good effort for a reasonably small indie team. So I'm going to give it 3.
I don't know. I didn't really see it. I mean, I guess it looks marginally better than Forest. I do want to bring up that they totally stole the Shadowrun Returns font. Yeah, but I mean, appearance-wise, the game's okay. I've seen better-looking stuff from indie studios, so that's going to stop it from getting the 3 chairs in that regard. And the voice acting, I mean, it's passable, but once after iteration number 692 of Arena Completed, I kind of just want to stab my ears. And it's just not good. I mean, it's passable. The voice acting is not awful. It's just the dialogue is miserable. And yeah, visually, it's just kind of meh. So I'll give it 2.
Yeah, sounds-wise, I think they did an all right job at trying to make the game sound like it was a TV show of some sort, and you're playing a character that's on a TV show, and he or she has to please the fans. I mean, considering the voice work, it's all right. But what really struck me was, at first, I was genuinely impressed at how good the game looked, and, you know, having played Forced, the performance was actually pretty good. But then I started to see exactly what corners were being cut. The most egregious of which is, even if you have everything on 11, when you finish one of the showdowns, the camera does that sickening panning shot around your character. And if you pay attention to the bits that are usually obscured by the camera, you realize that they're considerably lower resolution. The textures look all pixely. It's actually kind of jarring. So I have to get a chair for that. 3 chairs.
All right, so that's 2 chairs for Shiny and Sounds. Up next is Control. Then, how did it control?
Well, you remember that prompt that I was talking about in the mix with the working section that should have just faded away because it's genuinely useless. Because you can go to a screen that will tease you. It's like, would you like to map your controller? Why, yes, game, I would. And it says, haha, too bad. It's just not going to happen. And it's not like we're reviewing a game that just had its day 1 Linux release. I mean, this came out for Linux. It's been well over a week. So, and it's a known issue. And it's kind of a big thing because at its core, this is a twin-stick shooter. I mean, it's something you want to sit back and play with a controller. Technically, you can play it with WASD plus your gerbil, but it feels a bit janky. And yeah, it's just off. Completely playable, but the entire time I'm thinking, man, this would be so much better if I wasn't having to play it like this. But I'm kind of nitpicking. WASD and the gerbil, I mean, it does work. Everything does function. I didn't bother having to rebind anything. Worked out of the box. Default mappings. Didn't have a serious issue. So I'm going to say a decent job on that. But get that controller working, guys and gals. 3 chairs.
Oh, yeah, no, this thing needs a controller so badly. I mean, okay, so I'm going to get back to the controller a little bit. I like the deck building mechanic. The deck building mechanic is very, very solid. It's fairly intuitive. And like after 1 or 2 rounds, after you accumulate some cards, you start figuring out how to fuck with your deck and maybe come up with a decent strategy to not die all the time. Because that's one of the main things that you will do in this game. Die. But oh my God, like, I don't know. To me, the keyboard and mouse controls feel so clumsy. Dodging is a real big pain in the ass, considering you have to dodge a lot in this game, or else your ever-dwindling health supply will just reach 0, and you'll make it to the boss with like 2 health to spare, and then you'll get noped by like some creep that's coming towards you. Also, this screen doesn't capture my cursor, and because And because of that, whenever I need to move my reticule to the opposite side of my character, I go all the way to the freaking left because, you know, I'm into the game. I'm kind of going with the exaggerated movements, and it sends my cursor all the way over to the other monitors where I get killed to death because I've lost control of my little dude. So that's a bit of horse shit. I mean, it could have gotten 3 chairs if it had like a actual controller support. And I tried with the PlayStation controller. I tried with the Steam controller. Neither of them worked. Unfortunate. Just no. So it gets 2 chairs.
Yeah, that's the big thing. They released a game on Steam which doesn't work with a Steam controller on Steam OS. Are you proud of yourselves, developers? Really? Because this is the point where my sympathy for you wears off. It's not just not supporting the Steam controller, which is the de facto controller that you should be supporting if you're releasing a game on Steam, just saying. But let's say your players have some manner of quirk or disability, which makes it so they prefer/have to play games with the directional arrows instead of WASD. How often do you expect they will reset the controls whenever they start the game before they realize they just can't be asked anymore? 6. It was 6 times for me. 6 times before I realized no matter how much I enjoy your game, I'm not about to do a chore every time I start it. If I wanted to do chores, I wouldn't be playing video games now, would I? And I told them about this. I went to the Steam forums, I sent them an email. They never replied on either of those accounts, so they get nothing from me. 1 chair.
I mean, you like chore. You don't like playing chore video games, but you do play Pokemon Gold or Go and Hearthstone. So that's 2 chairs for control. Let's wrap this up with fun. Ben, did you have fun playing FORCED SHOWDOWN?
I'm rubbish at this game. Absolute, genuine, 100% rubbish. Didn't stop me from playing it. My first thought when I started this up and got into it, I was like, oh, cards, lovely, deck building, my favorite thing. That's a lie. It's not my favorite. It's like, we're going to have to do this, aren't we? And I was like, yeah, all right, well, we got to give it a fair shake. So, you know, I did sit down and I built a custom deck. You know, for fucking all good, it did me. I mean, it did keep me alive longer in the game because all health in deck. This is one of those games where you have, it's like 6 arenas, something in that area, but you have a finite set health. And occasionally, you know, at the beginning of each stage of that main arena, you would get, you know, a couple of cards, depending on how much mana points you have, to spend. And I was hoping for health all the time. But I'll talk a bit more of that in a second. That's really the only way to regenerate anything. There's some other options that will allow you to regenerate health while you're fighting. Admittedly, the first 6 times I was killed to death, it was moderately enjoyable. Didn't mind it. I was like, this is not, you know, brand new in the world of gaming, but I mean, it's kind of fun. I even managed to get noped by 2 different bosses. I was quite proud of myself that I made it that far. Then it kind of started getting repetitive because, again, I suck at this game. I can't beat a boss to say, and I genuinely trying couldn't beat a boss. But most importantly, the one thing I don't like about this game is the card system, and especially how it influences your health and your abilities, because I don't like games that make the player rely on blind ass luck. So, yeah, for that price, if you're like me, I'm going to be honest, if I saw this, saw it had cards in it, I was like, no, wouldn't have picked it up. If you're into that, Jordan's going to give you a better explanation of how that works and maybe how you can manipulate it. Pedro might as well, but yeah, that whole mechanic, not a fan. I'll give it 2 chairs because it didn't put me to sleep, and what little I did play of it was entertaining, but yeah, I think there's just way too many issues on top of the fun segment to make it, well, I don't know, fun.
Yeah, I kind of agree with North Ranger. Were you going to tell this game to eat a bag of decks? All right. Thank you, North Ranger. That was actually really good. Yeah, I too am awful at this game. I'm getting better though, because I can reliably kill 2 bosses in a row now, depending on what modifier your arena has. Because that's one of the things. All the arenas have different modifiers that fuck with you in some way or another. Yeah, Ven's kind of like a little overplaying the RNG element of this game, because while, yes, your upgrades are determined by your deck and you sort of get those upgrades randomly, you can make it. I've made it through like fairly far into the arena with like minimal upgrades. You can do it. You just need to be good at dodging, which is something that you can't do effectively because you're not using a controller. But you know, yeah, dodging with the keyboard controls is really fucking clumsy, and oftentimes you'll actually like start the map in a corner where several enemies will just fuck you right from the get-go, and you're dead. That's it. End of story. You might make it out of there, but you'll have no health. And that's really where the cards come in, because you really have to build your strategy around keeping yourself alive and increasing your damage output so that you can, in fact, like wipe out enemies faster to not get attacked. And to be fair, most of the enemies have a fairly good telegraph in terms of when they attack. So if you're not entirely stupid, you can dodge most of them. So it's fairly forgiving in that regard. But the deck building mechanic is really where this game shines. I mean, I don't like the slot machine way that you get cards, but beyond that, trying to come up with like a decent strategy. I came up with a decent cheese strat for abusing disposable items and a card that gives you free health for it. I affectionately called it Fuck Plan Vom Deck for like the 3 people who will get that reference. And, you know, again, all the while I was thinking, you know, this game would be fantastic if I had a controller. And that's really where this boils down to. I was actually tempted to give this 1 chair just because I was dying so much, but once I learned how to dodge, it was a little better. The deck building is really the strong point of this game. Everything else sort of falls at the seams, which is why I can only really give it 2 chairs.
Yeah, I like this game. I do. Like I mentioned last week on the podcast, this is exactly what Flame Break could have been if they hadn't decided to use those horrible bobblehead visuals. Even the deck building aspect, even if it is completely optional, because if you just go with the default deck, as you unlock more cards, some of those cards will actually be progressively introduced into your deck. So it is completely optional. But it is very well done if you want to go in and optimize your character build. The combat is very similar to what the original Forced had, but it's improved. Very, very much so. Whenever you hit an enemy or even just a barrel or a pot, there's a very satisfying thwack and a simple but very well-placed freeze frame. That, in my opinion, is how you make the combat feel meatier in a third-person eye-in-the-sky style camera game. That sentence actually took me a few tries to get through while I was typing it in the notes, and it didn't really turn out all that awesome. But summing things up, I like FORCED Showdown. What I don't like is having to reset the key bindings every goddamn time I restart the game. It's 2016. It's not like there's a freaking asset on the Unity store called Rewired, which will take care of most, if not all, of the control issues. Not just the forgetfulness of non-default keyboard bindings, but the freaking controller support. 2 chairs.
Yeah, so that's 2 chairs for fun. And we totaled that up. That is 2 chairs for FORCED Showdown, because it's in all caps. So you gotta yell it. So, gentlemen, final thoughts.
I don't know. It might become a good game. I mean, they have a couple things to sort, like they did with Forced. They did continue updating Forced, so maybe FORCED Showdown will get there. And one of the things I forgot is you gain all these abilities in each stage, you know, with the different arenas. Then you lose them all at the end. But
you get a boon.
I was like, that's another thing I didn't like about it. Pedro?
Yeah, it's they did release the Forced, what did they call it? The slightly better edition, I think. Yeah.
I mean, they got a sense of humor. They're not like, they don't think
they do.
They're not
they
walking around going, it's perfect. How dare you judge us? They're like, yeah, all right.
Yeah, they realized that what they did wasn't exactly perfect, and they have a lot of room for improvement. And even though they improved a lot from Force, which is not a hard thing to do considering the kind of game that Force was, but there's still quite a bit of room for improvement in FORCED Showdown. Yeah, there's a lot. They brought the Bagger 288 to the quarry, but it's a big fucking quarry.
Now, the one thing you need to know if you're going to pick up this game and play it is do not play any of the melee characters, because that is a recipe for just getting murdered. Stick with the default guy. He has a ranged attack that stops you from just getting your ass stomped. And Pedro will go on and say, well, I can do it. And you need to luck out and get a lot of health items. You have to get a lot of health items because like the amount of like fucking area effect damage that you get in this game makes like being melee really, really miserable. And everyone has that like couple seconds of invincibility move. It's not enough. But yeah, definitely need some controller support if they manage to patch that in. I would actually give this game a bit of a recommendation. Also, maybe some multiplayer. That would have been kind of neat. But alas, that's not what this game is about.